What's going on, Bengals fans? Stone Shields on hand for another edition of Bengals Breakdown. Happy Sunday to you guys. Hope everybody is having a good weekend. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be talking about the latest in regards to Zac Taylor's search for a new Cincinnati Bengals defensive coordinator. Obviously, this is the talk around the team at this point in the offseason. Really, this is going to be what kickstarts the Bengals offseason when they bring in a new guy to be that DC, and then we can really start diving into draft talk and NFL free agency as well. But we're all kind of just waiting for Zac Taylor to make a decision and ultimately hire someone as the next Bengals defensive coordinator. That's coming up on today's show, all the latest in that search. Just heads up, doing a little solo producing here on today's edition of Bengals Breakdown. So if you see me look down or whatever the case may be, just trying to do multiple things at once as we progress through today's show. Before we get into today's show, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already. We will have a video when Zac Taylor decides who will be the next Cincinnati Bengals defensive coordinator. Even if we are not at work, we will have an at-home video for you guys when that decision is made. Help us out. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/BengalsTV. We are approaching 16,000 subscribers here at the channel. That is our next milestone. Hopefully, we can accomplish that within the next week or so. All right, let's start with what Dejon Anthony said on Thursday night. So he went on TikTok Live and said the hire will shock you. He was kind of messing around, answering some fan questions on TikTok Live. Now, I went back and saw the video, and it is pretty clear that he was joking when he was saying this. If you have any feel in terms of how to read a person, it was pretty clear to me that he indeed was joking. A lot of people took it seriously. In fact, I had several text messages over the weekend asking me, hey, I heard the Bengals hired a guy. I can't figure out who it is. This was just Dejon Anthony messing around. He later on admitted that he was joking / trolling, right? And ultimately, the Bengals have not made a decision as of filming here a little bit after noon on Sunday. Anthony, of course, finished his rookie season out of Ole Miss. Unfortunately for him, what people remember him for in 2024 is that defensive pass interference in Week 2 against Kansas City that ultimately lost Cincinnati that game. I do believe he has a promising future as a 7th-round pick. Not many people expected him to make the roster. He was able to do that, so props to him. But he was just having a little bit of fun on TikTok Live. No decision has been made at this point by Zac Taylor. Now let's get into what ESPN's Jeremy Fowler had to say on the 10th, a couple of days ago over the weekend. He said former Bears head coach Matt Eberflus is involved in the Bengals defensive coordinator search. Per sources, Eberflus, fired by Chicago on November 29th, should be in the coordinator mix league-wide as the carousel spins. This, of course, is very, very interesting. We have talked about Matt Eberflus as a potential candidate for this position in some of our videos last week, and now Fowler, of course, is reporting it. So we're just kind of waiting for him to get an interview because no interview has been reported with the Cincinnati Bengals. All that has been reported is that there is mutual interest between the two sides, and Eberflus is involved, according to Jeremy Fowler, in the Bengals defensive coordinator search. We'll kind of dive into this a little bit more here in a moment, but first let's get to the pinned comment of today's video. Would you hire Matt Eberflus as the Cincinnati Bengals defensive coordinator? Type Y for yes or N for no for me in the comments section of today's video. If that ad comes here on YouTube, that's totally fine. Take advantage of it. Get down in the comments. Let us know what you think. All right, let's take a look at Eberflus's coaching history. Started out in the NFL, I should say. Keep in mind, this is a Toledo guy. He went to Toledo, so he has Ohio roots. He might be looking to make a return back to the state of Ohio. Just a little bit of a side note there. He was the Browns linebackers coach for a couple of years, and then he spent a lot of time in Dallas. This is where he really kind of built a name for himself with the Dallas Cowboys as a linebacker coach, eventually transitioned to their linebacker coach / passing game coordinator on defense as well, and he coached some great Dallas Cowboys linebackers. DeMarcus Ware is one of the first guys that comes to mind. He had an incredible season where he had like 19 sacks, I believe, under Eberflus. Also coached Sean Lee, who was a great linebacker for Dallas as well. Really did some good stuff with player development, which we'll talk about that here in a little bit. as far as that goes. And then he did a really nice job in Indianapolis for a few years as the Colts defensive coordinator. That was really a solid defense in the NFL. That led to him getting the Bears coaching job in 2022. Now let's talk about that Bears job, because obviously his tenure in Chicago was not pretty. And I think when Bengals fans get this news, they're like, well, I don't want to hire this guy, because they're looking at this right here: 3-14, 7-10, and 4-8. Obviously, none of those years are playoff years for Matt Eberflus, and he really struggled when it came to clock management, decision making, some personnel stuff offensively, some, hiring assistants offensively. All of those things were struggles for Matt Eberflus. But I do just want to say he's not going to have to do any of that in Cincinnati if he came in as the DC. Obviously, his job would be to coach up the defense, and that is something he has done a great job of throughout his career in the NFL. I get why Bengals fans wouldn't be excited about this, because it's the guy that just had a horrible tenure as a head coach and got fired. But just because you are a bad head coach does not mean you are a bad coordinator. This would not be my first pick for Cincinnati, but I don't think the Bengals fans should get too bent out of shape if indeed they hire Matt Eberflus. More on Eberflus here in a moment, but first, of course, we got to give a shout out to our friends over at Game Time, because today's show is presented by Game Time. Look, the playoffs are underway here on Sunday. We got a full slate of games, and it's not too late to get tickets to see some of these NFL playoff games, whether it is next week or the conference championship week. Whatever the case may be. I have been to a few Cincinnati Bengals playoff games before I was working here at Chat Sports, and the environment in an NFL playoff game is just absolutely electric. So really would encourage you guys to go over to Game Time and check out some tickets and potentially get you some tickets for a playoff game here this postseason. My two favorite features on Game Time: the seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy with Game Time. Secondly, the all-in pricing. Toggling this feature up front allows you to see your total up front, so you don't get hit with any of those surprise fees at checkout like some of those other ticketing companies can get you with. Also, event cancellation protection. If you're going to a concert, the artist cancels on you, Game Time is not going to hose you. They're going to get you your money back. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's get into this quote here. James Rapine, of course, does a phenomenal job covering the Cincinnati Bengals for Sports Illustrated. He had this quote in one of his pieces from an anonymous NFL coach talking about Matt Eberflus and potentially joining the Cincinnati Bengals. This is what the quote from the coach says: Eberflus would be a steal for the Bengals, one of the most complex and difficult defenses to plan for. Exotic packages on third down and passing situations was one of the best in Dallas and early on in Indianapolis. I believe he could develop the talent. He had multiple ways to run the defense over the years based on who he had. Defense was really never his issue. Again, understand the concerns with Eberflus as a head coach, but we have to evaluate things from a defensive coordinator / defensive coach perspective, and he's had a lot of success when it comes to that in his career in the NFL. Again, no interview has been reported. This is just Jeremy Fowler of ESPN discussing this. I would assume in the coming days we are going to hear about a potential interview between Zac Taylor and Matt Eberflus, but as of filming, that has not yet occurred. He has the respect of Zac Taylor. If you remember, the Bengals and Bears had a joint practice before the season, before their preseason game in which they played, and Taylor said he didn't have a personal relationship with Eberflus, but he has gone against him several times throughout his career and said he always had a tremendous respect for Matt Eberflus, and he always made things difficult for opposing offenses. So that certainly is noteworthy. But the biggest question is the player development. Can Matt Eberflus develop these young guys on this Bengals defense? I've said it a bunch. I'm going to continue to say it all throughout the offseason. As long as Joe Burrow is here, the majority of that money is going to be spent on the offensive side of the ball with him and Jamar Chase, possibly T. Higgins. Defensively, it's going to be all about youth and development. Bengals are always going to have a young defense, and they're always going to need to be able to develop. Lou Anarumo, tremendous defensive mind, wizard on defense. Player development wasn't really his strength in the past few years. The next guy that Zac Taylor hires for this position has to be able to develop the young talent on this roster. We will see if Matt Eberflus can be that guy for Cincinnati if he does indeed get hired. Another opportunity for you guys to get involved with our show here at Bengals Breakdown. Who do you want as the Bengals' next defensive coordinator? Obviously, I've asked you guys this several times, since Lou Anarumo has been fired. But let me know if your thoughts have changed since this latest news regarding Matt Eberflus has come out. Some more news that we will get to here on today's show. The Jets announcing they have completed an interview with Trey Brown for their general manager position. You might be thinking, who is Trey Brown? Well, believe it or not, Trey Brown plays a pretty integral part in this organization for the Cincinnati Bengals and is basically Duke Tobin's right-hand man when it comes to front office and how they do stuff from a personnel perspective. Let's take a look at Trey Brown's career path to this point. Cut his teeth in New England, started out there as a scout before transitioning to Philadelphia. Believe it or not, was a part of a Super Bowl championship in Philadelphia. Ironically, came against the New England Patriots, was the director of college scouting for several years there with Philadelphia. And then he decided to kind of go a different route with the AAF and XFL. Spent some time there as an executive, and he wasn't just building personnel there. He was really building an entire organization. And that was probably really, really good experience for him. And then for those 2 years where he was able to do that, and that's experience that he probably would not have gotten in the NFL. Then decides to come back to the NFL, was the scout for the Bengals for a season, and now over the past few years has been the Bengals senior personnel executive. Wanted to bring this up because if the Bengals do indeed lose him, I think that is significant. You don't see a ton of front office turnover from this organization. And if Tobin loses his right-hand guy, that could be significant going forward. But the Jets, of course, are interviewing all types of people for that GM spot. So I definitely would consider it a long shot that Brown would be able to land this role with New York, but certainly thought it was necessary to bring up on today's show. Make sure you guys give me a follow over on Twitter for all the latest Bengals offseason news and rumors. Trying to get up to 600 followers on Twitter. Help me out. All of our Bengals Breakdown content will be posted to my Twitter page. Also getting some short form content with some YouTube shorts up there as well. Would really appreciate it. Give me a follow over on Twitter at StoneShields_. And before we leave, just want to bring up this last tweet from Tom Pelissero of NFL Network in regards to Lou Anarumo. He said the Colts have begun their defensive coordinator search with former Bengals DC Lou Anarumo and longtime NFL coach Steve Wilks among those expected to interview next week, per sources. I just wanted to bring up Lou once again on today's show. I think Lou kind of got the short end of the stick a little bit. Was the defense good enough the past 2 years? No, it was downright atrocious, and Zac Taylor was forced into making a move. He's going to land on his feet. I have no doubt about that, and if Indianapolis hires him, that's going to be a great move for them, and he's going to have that be a top 10 defense next year, I feel like, because they've got some pieces there in Indy to be able to make that happen. I would be shocked if Lou was not a DC with some team next season in the NFL, but of course we will see. Crazy stuff happens in the coaching world. But also kind of ironic that he's interviewing with the Colts, and Matt Eberflus, of course, really made a name for himself after Dallas as the DC for the Indianapolis Colts. Once Lou gets hired, we will have a video for you guys on that as well, or we'll at least mention it on a video in the near future.